Hello everyone, happy Monday and happy International Women's Day. I am so excited to be here with all of you tonight. I have two great projects to create with you all and a treat holder as well, which I haven't done a 3D item in some time on my live, so I thought I would mix it up tonight. I'm just going to give it a minute for the Facebook algorithms to kick in and for people to see this. If you're joining me tonight, please share the video, give me a thumbs up, like. Don't forget, everybody that shares the video is entered into a draw to win the cards and projects I'm going to make tonight. Last week we had several people share and I did a draw, and Sonia is the lucky winner of the cards, so those will be going out in the mail. Congratulations, Sonia. How have you been celebrating International Women's Day? I don't know if you can see, I have this chunky necklace on. It was actually a fundraiser for Halton Women's Shelter. The necklaces were all handmade, and they were all the funds from the purchase went to the Halton Women's Shelter, which is a great cause and one fitting for the day. I'm super proud of my team and my daughters and my customers and all of you. You're strong, you're empowered, and I think we need to build one another up any way we can, straighten our crowns, not knock them off. It's far too easy to get caught up in the competition and the comparison trap, and today is just a reminder that you need to live your authentic self and support those women around you. Don't feel threatened. And it's about all the other things too. It's about equal pay and fairness and equality and all of those wonderful things, but there's so much to encompass. I don't want to use this as a platform or a soapbox, so to speak, but just embrace today and what it's all about. So I have, like I said, two cards and a treat package, which we're going to create today. And one of the cards is actually inspired by International Women's Day. So I'm going to flip the camera around and we're going to get creating. Okay, I just want to make sure the mic is working. So if you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. We've had some difficulty the past few weeks with the mic on my phone picking up the feed. So just give me a quick thumbs up if you can hear me. I'm going to actually turn my iPad up just for a minute, see if you can hear me. Hopefully that's working. I think it's working. Okay. So the first card we're going to make tonight is using the Hydrangea Haven stamp set. I actually hadn't used this prior to creating the card for tonight's live, so I'm super excited to share what I've come up with. And as I said, it's inspired by International Women's Day, so it is the lovely, gorgeous grape color, which is the color for International Women's Day. And this is the card we're going to create. And it says, "To an Incredible Woman," which again, fitting given the day. So let's go ahead and I'll show you how I created that. So again, we're using the Hydrangea Heaven stamp set, and I used this stamp here as well as this one, and then our sentiment. So to start, I have a piece of gorgeous grape cardstock measuring 8.5 by 5.5. I'm going to fold that in half, and this will become a 5.5 by 4.25 card base. And I like to burnish my edges with a bone folder just to give it that nice crisp edge, and it lies a little bit flatter when you do that. The next thing I have is a piece of Highland Heather cardstock, and this piece measures 4 inches by 2.25, and we're going to attach that right to the card base at the bottom, and it should leave an 1/8 of an inch border along the bottom and the sides. So I'm just using my seal to attach that. Like so, give it a good push. The next thing I have is this beautiful designer series paper, and this is actually part of the Butterfly Bijou designer series paper I introduced last week. You can see the lovely butterflies on the back. But I really liked this watercolor tie-dye paper. I felt it really encompassed the hydrangeas, so we're going to use that. So again, I'm just going to use Seal, and this is going to get layered right on top of that piece of Highland Heather. And this piece of designer series paper measures 3 3/4 inches long by 2 inches wide. So there's our DSP. So now we're going to do some stamping. And what we're going to do is, I actually like to cut, in this case, the die cut first. So you can see that I've used a die cut here. Hi Laura, thanks for joining. So I've got a piece of basic white cardstock, and I'm going to use my stitched shape dies, which if you watch my lives often, you know that these are one of my favorites. So this is the largest circle from that die pack, and I'm just going to pull in the mini Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, or the Baby Boss. You might also hear it referred to as the mini Skem, for Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. And so I'm just going to layer the plates. So you need a 1, a 2. You're going to put your paper, your die, and then another 2. And I do find there's a little bit of a trick with the mini machine to get the plates to go through. You want to stagger them. You don't want them all to be perfectly lined up on the end. You can see I have 3 different starting positions, and that's just to give it enough leverage for the wheel to grab it. And you notice I just turned it so I can crank it a little bit better. And when I pull the plates apart, we have our die cut. So there's our circle, and you can see those beautiful stitches right inside that circle. And while I have that out, it's mounted on another piece of Highland Heather, and this time we're using the layering circles dies, and I'm using the largest scalloped circle. So that's this guy here. So I'm just going to cut him out as well, or her, since it's International Women's Day. And again, we're staggering those plates. And we're going to crank this through. And if you don't find it goes right away, just give it a shift with the plates. And if you still can't get it, there is a little trick. So it says to use the 1 and the 2s, but I have found that if you swap out the 1 for the 3, sometimes it works a little bit better. So we're still staggering those plate edges, but you can see it catches right away, and we're just going to crank that through. So there's a little tidbit for you. I'm just going to put the machine to the side. We will be pulling it out for other projects tonight. So there's our layered, or our scalloped circle for our layers. We'll just put the dies to the side. All right, so now we're going to do some stamping. So I'm going to pull in the large image first, and you can see it's all at one piece. I'm going to stamp that whole thing in gorgeous grape ink. And because it's a large stamp, I'm going to ink upside down, just so I can make sure it's fully covered and has a nice even coverage. And then I'm going to stamp that on the circle as close to the top as you can without going off the edge. And it's okay if your leaves and stem come off the bottom. And then you can put that stamp to the side because we're done with that for this evening. And now we want to get that gorgeous color on the inside. So that's this stamp here. And what I've done with this one, and I don't think I cleaned it before I used it. So let me do that first. Same with my stems here. So for this one, I'm using Pool Party to pull out the blues in that DSP we're using. Laura, that's a great tip. The Baby Boss fits inside the new Stampin' Up! Lunch bag. if you're a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, you can get the adorable lunch bag. I actually do have one in the office that I gave away as a prize during my bingo the other night. So I might just have to try that. I didn't get a lunch bag for myself yet, so I might do that. Back to our stamping. So what I'm doing is I'm inking my stamp in the pool party first. And then I'm going to put the pool party to the side, and I'm going to bring in Highland Heather, which is the lighter purple. And I'm going to do a technique called rock and roll. And so this, you are literally just rocking your stamp around the edges. So you can see the two-tone color there. And then we're just going to stamp that on top of our flowers. And if they don't line up perfectly, that's okay. It's not meant to be perfect. And you can see that we get that gorgeous two-tone color without having to stamp and second guess. So that's the rock and roll technique. So I'm just closing up the Highland Heather because I know I will get it all over if I don't. And I'm just going to clean my stamp. So then we want to fill in our leaves. So I'm going to pull in Granny Apple Green for that. We're going to use the solid leaf image. And I don't want it to be too dark, so I'm going to actually stamp off once on my scrap paper, and then we're going to line that up as best as possible and just give it a stamp. And again, if it doesn't line up perfectly, that's okay. The little bit of abstract is actually in style. So there we have our hydrangea. So we can go ahead and mount that on our Highland Heather scalloped circle. So I'm just using seal to do that. Trying to make sure it's even all the way around. And I like to turn it over and press just so that if the ink isn't totally dry, it doesn't smear. So there we have our flower. So we're going to attach that now to our base using Stampin' Dimensionals. And because it's a large circle, feel free to add lots for support. So I've got 5 on there. We'll peel off the backs. And you can put your stem straight up and down if you want. I want mine slightly sideways. And then we're going to position that just above the DSP. And that's pretty as it is, but I think it needs a little something extra. So I've actually used the hydrangea dies, which coordinate with the stamp set, to cut out these itty bitty little white flowers. So these are using basic white paper and one of the dies. And on my sample I have 4, but I think I'm actually going to just try for 3 on this one. And I am going to use the Mambo multi-purpose liquid glue for these, as I find it's just a little bit easier to work with because the flowers are so small. And you don't need a lot of adhesive, so on this one that's going to attach to our circle, I'm only going to put it on one petal, and then we're going to use that petal to attach it, so it's slightly hanging off. And then next, we're just going to put a dab in the center there, and it's going to come down slightly beside the circle. And then this final one, we're going to have right down here. So there's our little flowers. And of course we need our sentiment on there. So I have a piece of basic white. It is 1 inch by 3.5 inches. And I'm pulling in the lovely label punch. So we're going to use this side to create that flourished end. So all you do is you slide your 1 inch strip in, and then I like to turn my punch over and just make sure it's flat against the back here, and then give it a squeeze. When you pull that out, you have that nice scallopy end. And then you're going to turn around, you're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. slide it in and then turn it over, and you can see if I didn't turn it over, that cut would be skewed. So then you can position your paper so it's nice and flat and get that perfect cut. Give it a squeeze and get rid of those ends. We're going to pull out our label, and now we can do some stamping. So this is also from the Hydrangea Heaven stamp set. It says, "To an Incredible Woman." And I'm going to stamp in Gorgeous Grape to tie it all together. And we're going to stamp right in the center of that label. Give it a nice push. And that's pretty as it is, but I think it needs a little bit of shading. So you can see on the sample, there's just a hint of the purple around the edges. So how I did that is with our Highland Heather ink pad and a sponge dauber. Laura, I think so. It's what inspired the card, actually. I was looking at stamp sets thinking, what can I use for International Women's Day? And as soon as I saw the sentiment, I knew I had to create something with that stamp set, and it works. Hydrangeas tend to be purple, pinks, and blues, and so it all fits. So I'm dabbing the dauber in the ink pad and then dabbing it on my scrap to get a little bit off before I just rub it over the edge of the paper to give it that slightly distressed look with the Highland Heather ink. And you can make that as dark or as light as you want. You can be more dramatic on the corners if you want. Whatever pleases your creativity. I'm going to close that up, and then we're going to use dimensionals once again here. Cora, thanks. I thought so too. I really wanted to create something that embodied what today's all about, and I thought it fit perfectly. Not to mention, it's a great sentiment for Mother's Day. So if you're looking for card ideas for Mother's Day, which is coming up, and will be here before we know it, this would be a great one. So there we have our sentiment. And of course, you know me and bling. We need some bling-a-bling. So these are our beautiful pastel pearls. Look at those. Love them. I'm going to grab my take your pick tool here. And I'm going to use the Highland Heather coordinating ones. So I'm going to put one in the center of that flower. And then I'm going to use one of these pool party ones right beside it before coming down with another Highland Heather on that third one. So there we have our first card for International Women's Day. You can see it, the label is actually slightly longer on this one, and I'm okay with that. I think it works, and what I love about that label is you can customize it. So it punches out 3 different sizes based on where you position your paper, and then you have 2 different ends that you can create and different lengths. It's super versatile punch. So that is card number 1. And for the second project, we're going to stick with the Hydrangea stamp set. So we're going to move on to that next. And that is actually a treat holder. So it doesn't perfectly coordinate with the card, but I thought it was super fun. How cute is this? And what I love about this treat holder is there's no cutting other than our circle for our stamping. The packaging itself, there's no cutting. So fun. So let me show you how we did this. So I am using that Butterfly Bijou Designer Series paper once again, and this is part of the Butterfly Bouquet bundle that you can purchase now. The Designer Series paper is only available until May 3rd or while quantities last. So if you like this beautiful paper, I would recommend stocking up sooner rather than later because I have a feeling it's going to sell out. So to create this little treat package, and these are so simple, you need to start with a piece of 6x6 paper. It can be designer series paper, it can be cardstock, whatever works. If you like the designer series paper and it's not pre-cut to 6x6, you can cut your 12x12 down and use that. So all you're going to do to create this card is fold your 6x6 piece of designer series paper diagonally across. You're going to burnish your edges, make sure that they're nice and tight. And then you want your point to be on the top. You're going to fold in your points from the sides, like so. And try and keep them as even as possible. You want that triangle at the top to be relatively centered. And once you've got that positioned, give it a good crease. So I'm going to use my bone folder once again just to burnish the edges there. So this is what we're left with. And then to hold everything together, you don't even need adhesive here. We're going to fold that top triangle down. So we're going to separate it, leaving one up the back and one down the front. And then we have this super cute little pocket. You could fill that with some chocolates. You could put a tea bag in there. I found these super cute little hand creams at Bath & Body Works, which fits nicely in there. So cute little pocket, and you can decorate it any way you want. So let's demonstrate how I did this one. So once again, I'm using my favorite dies, the Stitched Shapes dies and Basic White. So let's pull in the Baby Boss again. And I'm going to cut it. This is the second largest, so it's a size down from what we used earlier. And we're going to just run that through. So we're left with our little circle here. And I mentioned we're still using the Hydrangea stamp set, so we are going to use the smaller cluster flowers here with the watercolor fill. And then we have the leaves, so we have the detailed leaves and then the watercolor leaves. And we have our sentiment, which is, I appreciate all the little things you do, or all the things you do. So for this one, I stamped the flowers in Melon Mambo first, which I put away. There we go, Melon Mambo. And I'm stamping those up towards the upper left side. And then you can close that up. And then I pulled in the Pool Party once again, just to tie everything together with the designer series paper. So I'm just going to ink that up, and we're going to stamp right over top just to give it some fill there. Put those to the side, and then we're going to use our little leaves and Granny Apple Green once again. So I'm going to stamp the outline in full strength, and we'll do one on either side of the flowers. And then the fill, we're going to stamp off once before we fill that in. And I can't see with that on there. There we go. So there we have our fill. Stamp off and stamp. So there we have our flowers. And of course we need a sentiment on there. So I'm pulling in Calypso Coral ink, which coordinates again with the designer series paper, and our sentiment, and that's just going to come at the bottom like so. I love how these colors all come together. And then we're going to use dimensionals to attach that to our package. And there we have our additional little treat package. So super cute. And if you really wanted to, I have a couple of flowers here from a leftover from my bingo. They don't coordinate perfectly, but if you wanted to dress it up, you could add a couple of little flowers to your label to give it a little something extra. What do you think of that? So cute and so easy to make. Like, think about your upcoming Easter dinners. Even if we're unable to see extended family, even if you just set your table for your kids filled with like a little chocolate bunny or something, I think they would really like that. So that is our second project of the night. We're flying. The next one has a few more moving parts, so I'm actually just going to clean up my stamps so I can get them out of the way, because I know I'm going to create a mess with the next one. So the next card, we're using a couple of different pieces. So the stamp set is You Are Amazing, and it's actually the stamp set we used for the bingo event I held on Saturday night, which was so much fun. We had a lot of people come out, and we crafted as well as played bingo, and there were prizes. And I put another one on my calendar for June 5th because it was so much fun and I can't wait to do it again. So if you're looking for a fun girls' night out, you definitely want to check out my bingo event. The details are not posted yet. It's just a save the date at the moment, but I'm hoping to have those up later this week, so then you can go on and register and secure your spot. I don't think it will sell out because it's Zoom and I can have a lot of people on there, but I don't want to say never, because you don't know. I'm just gonna put my stamps away. If I don't do this now, I will inevitably lose pieces. They'll stick to things and then I'll never find them. I have lost many a die by not putting them away right after I use them. And so you can see that this stamp set has multiple pieces. It's a big one. And I can't wait to play with it some more. Like I said, this is the first time I've used it, was to create the projects for tonight. So that's Hydrangea Heaven. All right, we ready to see the next card? I think I have everything put away. All right, here we go. I love how bright and summery this card is. Coastal Cabana might be my all-time favorite color, but when you pair it with Melon, Mambo, Daffodil Delight, and Granny Apple Green, it is just amazing. I don't even think the camera does it justice. The lighting is not perfect. It doesn't showcase it properly. So this is the card we're going to make. And as I said, there's lots of little pieces here. So as I mentioned, we're using the You Are Amazing stamp set, and this is what we used the bingo event. I've got Coastal Cabana ink. I have Melon Mambo ink. I have dies from the Perennial Petals dies. So these are the dies here. And there is another one, leaves, which are buried here. Here's my leaves. So these are the dies we're using. So we're going to use this one, the little flower and the big detailed flower. And this is actually one of the stamp sets I will be featuring in my card club. So a little sneak peek for you. And then we have the label here from the Stitched So Sweetly dies, which is another one of my favorite die packs. We have rhinestones, and then of course our stamp set. So this is the You Are Amazing stamp set, and we are using You Are Amazing because, again, International Women's Day, and you know what? Sometimes we just need to tell the women in our lives that they're amazing. So let's get this card assembled. Our base is a standard 8.5 by 5.5 in Coastal Cabana. We are going to fold that in half, give the edge a nice fold, and then we're just going to set that to the side because there's a lot of other pieces that we need to do first. So let's pull in the baby boss, and we are going to do some die cutting. Now, and I see that there's still a flower left in my die here. So we want 2 of these Daffodil Delight flowers. So I already have one cut here if I can get it out. This is where, oh, there we go. So there's one. We want another one of those. And I also want 3 Melon Mambo flowers using the large die here. So I'm going to cut that at the same time. Aren't these colors fabulous? Just so springy. I really need extra hands here. There we go. The baby boss is just so light that when you go to crank the handle to get it started, it likes to slide a little bit. So there's our daffodil. This is what I mean when I said there was going to be potentially a lot of mess created with all these little bits. So I'm going to cut out another flower. And let's see if I can get my leaves on there at the same time. So I've got Granny Apple Green for the leaves. And let's see. I can be creative here with positioning. Get everybody in at once. All right, there we go. So there's our 2 Melon Mambo and our leaves. So I need 1 more Melon Mambo. And we are going to be able to assemble. All right, so I'm just going to tuck that to the side for a minute. We will pull it back for our sentiment. All right. So I'm actually going to start with the flowers. And we obviously want to pop all these little centers out. So if you have the Take Your Pick tool, you have a couple of options here. You have what I like to call the pokey tool, which works really well at just popping those out. You also have the detailed die brush that you can purchase that attaches to your Take Your Pick tool, and you run it over your die cuts and it pops out all those pieces for you. You'll notice I'm leaving the center in those, and it's just to give it some additional stability when I am attaching them to the base. Just clean up those bits, and then we're going to do the same thing with the leaf. So we just want to poke these little bits out. And poke, 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 poke. So then we've got our leaf, maybe. There we go. All right, so we've got all our little bits out. So now we can start assembling. And I'm going to start with the Melon Mambo flowers. And for this, I am using the Tombow glue as I throw it across my table. And so all I'm doing here is putting a swirl of glue right in the center. I'm okay if the petals are a little loose. And I'm going to line it up, the 2 petals at the top and 1 at the side, to give me that guide. And then this one, I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom here. So 2 petals top and bottom, or 2 petals at the bottom and 1 at the side for positioning. And now we can place our third one as centered as possible there. So a little bit of glue, and then I'm going to use the 2 petals against the side. Find our spacing. That looks pretty good. Give it a push. So there's our 3 Melon Mambo flowers. Now we're going to do our daffodil flowers, and for this I am using mini dimensionals, and they are going to be slightly larger than the center of the flower, but you can't really tell unless you're looking. If you're super concerned, you can cut the mini dimensional in half before you attach it. And these are just going to go right between the Melon Mambo flowers. So then I have my second one. Peel off the back. And I like you there. So there's our flowers attached to our base. And you can see the dimensional, like I said, but it's not hugely noticeable unless you're looking for it. And even if you do notice it, it doesn't take away from the card. So next we want to stamp our greeting. And so to do that, I'm just going to put the glue to the side for a moment. We're going to use basic white. And I didn't clean my stamp before I started, so let's do that. So there's 2 ways that you could ink your stamp here. One is by using your ink pads and masking. The other, so what I'm going to do is I want to put the You Are in Coastal Cabana and the Amazing in Melon Mambo. And I don't have a Coastal Cabana marker, so I'm going to ink it up just along the side of the ink pad. And it's okay if you get a little bit on the Amazing, because you can rub it off. And then I'm going to come in with my Melon Mambo Stampin' Right marker. And using the brush tip just on the side, I'm going to color on top of the Amazing, making sure that it's really well covered. And because these are water-based inks, you don't have to worry about it drying out before you stamp on it or stamp on your paper. All we're going to do is we're going to go and breathe on it. And now when we stamp, we have a lovely 2-tone stamp. Super easy, and it just creates that wow factor. So I want that to dry, and we're going to cut that out using the largest label here from the Stitched So Sweetly dies, which I mentioned at the start. It's one of my favorite label sets. Pull in the Baby Boss, get that lined up. Now you could cut out your tag first and then stamp, but because it's not a photopolymer stamp and you can't see the positioning, I like to stamp first and then cut, because then you know that you have it perfectly lined up in the center there. So we'll just crank that through. Oh, I have a tickle in my nose. I hope I don't sneeze. I apologize in advance if I do. There is our die cut. Love it. So we're going to pull our base back in here. And what I want you to do is figure out your positioning for the label. And what I've done, because the daffodil is popped up a little bit, I'm tucking the label underneath it. And the reason why we're not sticking this down yet is because we want to figure out where our leaves are going to go. And you want that stem not to be poking out the other side. So it just gives you an idea for layout. So I think I like that. So I'm going to take note here that this petal is just at this die or recess here. So now I can take my glue and we're just going to put it on the stem. We don't need to go far up because the label is going to be over top of it. We'll just push that down. Happy with that. We'll put the lid on our glue and then we're going to pull in our dimensionals to pop our label off the base. Pull off our backs. Oops. And so again, there's that recess. I know I want that petal over top. And I like that. We'll give it a push. And that's super pretty as it is, but you know me, I love bling. So I am going to pull in my rhinestones and I am going to add some bling to my card. Hopefully not with the dog hair that's attached. There we go. And there is card number, or sorry, I guess card number 2, project number 3 for the night. So that is our You Are Amazing card. And then we have our Hydrangea card. And the one thing I forgot to show you was I actually did the inside of the Hydrangea card because the Gorgeous Grape is a darker color. I just added a layer of basic white, so it's 4 inches by 5¼ inches. I stamped that little cluster of flowers in the corners in Gorgeous Grape. And then I sponged the edges using my sponge dauber and the Highland Heather, just like we did on the label, just to give it that contrast. So that is the Hydrangea card, our You Are Amazing card. And then of course, our little gift packaging that involves no cutting other than our labels. So those are our projects for tonight. I hope you enjoyed them. I'm going to come back over and talk to you. Hi. I hope you enjoyed the projects tonight. I had a lot of fun creating them for you. One of the things you may not realize is I often create in the 20 or 15 minutes leading up to my live. By the time I finish my full-time job and get dinner for the family and then get back down to my stamp room, it's usually a rush to figure out what I'm going to create for you all. So I appreciate you watching and sharing the video and commenting. I love to see your comments and interact with you as I'm crafting. I hope you learned something today, some technique that you can take away and experiment with in your own creating. I have a bunch of upcoming classes available and ready for registration. I have a sampler class. I have my March online card class featuring the art gallery bundle. Card Club is always open for registration. It's closed for March, but if you want the April kit, you can still sign up before April 7th, and the April kit will include the perennials petals dies that we used tonight, as well as the coordinating stamp set. So just a hint as to what we're going to be making. And I think that's all I have for you. Thank you again for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you all have a wonderful week.